So we found out for the first time that the driver had been offering to come in and testify under oath as far back as just a weeks after Cassidy made these claims, but the select committee would not bring them in. And then to top it all off, they never asked him about this incident.
Now, we got big news about the January 6 hearings. You remember the January 6 hearings. This was literally a made-for-television event that was meant to, well, really just put a final nail in the coffin of Donald Trump's political career. They showed us the entire insurrection. It was produced by an ABC entertainment producer for prime time. Liz Cheney was there coordinating the whole thing, and it was meant to kill Donald Trump's future. But of course, Donald Trump is now leading in the polls, including in all the battleground states. And if the election were held today, he would be elected president again. So that tells you how well the committee did at their task at hand. And now we're learning more about what a fraud, a sham, a piece of theater this entire committee hearing was. One of the most compelling moments was one with Cassidy Hutchinson, who had worked for the Trump White House, for the chief of staff, Mark Meadows. And she described a scene, you remember it, that Donald Trump was trying to wrestle the Secret Service, like the steering wheel of the beast from the Secret Service right here. I'll remind you of what the testimony was.
Angry response to that. Tony described him as being irate. The president said something to the effect of, "I'm the effing president, take me up to the Capitol now." To which Bobby responded, "Sir, we have to go back to the West Wing." The president reached up towards the front of the vehicle to grab at the steering wheel. Mr. Engel grabbed his arm, said, "Sir, you need to take your hand off the steering wheel. We're going back to the West Wing. We're not going to the Capitol." Mr. Trump then used his free hand to lunge towards Bobby Engel. And when Mr. Ornato had recounted this story to me, he had motioned towards his clavicles.
And was Mr. Engel in the room as Mr. Ornato told you this story?
He was angry.
Okay, that's really compelling stuff there. And by the way, if you take a look at that last moment there, when Liz Cheney asked about who was in the room when she was told the story, you can read between the lines and recognize that, in fact, Cassidy Hutchinson actually never witnessed what she just described in such vivid and emotional detail. See, that was a third-hand account of a story she was told by somebody. She wasn't in the car, and anybody who understands how the beast, the presidential limousine, works, you know that Donald Trump can't physically reach up and grab the steering wheel because, well, it's not open like that. That's not something the president can even physically do. So this thing was debunked pretty quickly. But Cassidy Hutchinson, you saw her there. First of all, she was coached to give her testimony by Alyssa Farah, who also worked in the Trump White House. She has turned on Donald Trump, and she hates him now. And she was rewarded with a contract, not just from CNN, but also ABC, where she sits on the panel at The View. So, you know, there's big money in getting a makeover physically as well as politically, and then turning on Donald Trump. You get rewarded for it, right? And Cassidy Hutchinson, same thing. She got a big book contract telling her story. She got the physical makeover. She looked fabulous, right? She's a superstar. And she and Alyssa Farah both kind of worked together to coax Cassidy out to do this testimony. Liz Cheney, by the way, who you saw there, who engineered this whole thing, boy, she was really sympathetic to Cassidy Hutchinson. Here's how she introduced her.
Today's witness, Ms. Cassidy Hutchinson, is another Republican and another former member of President Trump's White House staff. Certain of us in the House of Representatives recall that Ms. Hutchinson once worked for House Republican Whip Steve Scalise.
That's right. See, this is all to just set up the fact that she's not some crazy left-wing liberal Democrat. She is a Republican, and she's doing the good and patriotic thing. And there's no personal benefit to her whatsoever. I mean, except for the book deal and the accolades and the celebrations. And she might have a cable news deal now, too. Liz Cheney, of course, who did the same thing. She didn't win her primary because the voters of her state rejected her in Wyoming. It was humiliating. She lost by like double digits in the primary. But, of course, she got job on one of those, think tanks. It's probably Brookings Institute or something like that. Not that she needs the money, because she's Dick Cheney's daughter, and they got a ton of cash to work with after all of his public service, Also on this panel as a Republican was Adam Kinzinger. Again, Adam Kinzinger didn't even try to run for re-election, but he did get a big money contract at CNN as a political analyst, just like Alyssa Farah did. And it's almost like there's big money in Republicans turning on Donald Trump, just like Jonah Goldberg did with his CNN contract, Steve Hayes with his NBC News contract, and Charlie Sykes with his MSNBC contract. But I can go on and on. There's a ton of them, actually. And what's really funny is those are the same people who call themselves true conservatives and call Republicans who still support Donald Trump, they call us sellouts. We're the sellouts. They're the ones with the big TV contracts and book deals. We're sellouts. To sell out, don't you actually have to get money in return? Where's my contract? But that's neither here nor there. Now you know who Cassidy Hutchinson. You saw her testimony. You saw all of it. But what you didn't see was the actual driver of that car, the one in question. You see, you've got this testimony from Cassidy Hutchinson saying, I heard secondhand from someone else that Donald Trump tried to reach up and take the steering wheel of the presidential limousine and force the car to go to the Capitol on January 6th. Now, I'm no congresswoman like Liz Cheney or a congressman like Adam Kinzinger. Did I get that right? Because I'm always confused about pronouns. I'm no lawyer. I'm no genius. But if I'm hearing Cassidy Hutchinson give me that testimony, the next call I'm making is to the driver of the limousine. And this is a select committee of the United States House of Representatives with subpoena power. You can get anyone you want to come and testify and answer your questions. Why wouldn't you get that driver? That would be huge. I want the driver to tell me in vivid detail about when Donald Trump climbed over from the back seat of the presidential limousine and wrestled the steering wheel away from him to get the car to the Capitol. Don't you want to hear that testimony? We never did. Why didn't we hear that testimony? This is Representative Loudermilk of Georgia. He's looking into the January 6th committee's behavior under the last Congress, under Speaker Nancy Pelosi. It's hard for him to do this job, by the way, because a good chunk of the evidence that committee had collected has been destroyed. That's weird, isn't it? But he's piecing it together, and he learned something. He learned something about Cassidy Hutchinson's testimony and about the limo driver. Take a look.
And what's interesting, John, is in the very beginning of the driver's testimony, his attorney starts off by chastising the select committee. And he said, we offered to come in July, August, September, and now it's November. So we found out for the first time that the driver had been offering to come in and testify under oath as far back as just a weeks after Cassidy made these claims, but the select committee would not bring them in. Wow. And then to top it all off, they never asked him about this incident.
Wow.
He had to interject it himself. So walking away just from that testimony tells me that Cassidy Hutchinson her testimony became the narrative of the select committee on January 6th. They had determined that was going to be the story, and they didn't want anything else to get in the way or circumvent that. But every testimony we have other than hers either never mentions those stories or totally contradicts her testimony.
Totally contradicts it. And the driver was begging to come in and testify, and they never let him. It's almost like the January 6th committee led by Liz Cheney there was not meant to get to the truth. It was a big piece of propaganda that had nothing to do with actually revealing the facts of what happened. You noticed, of course, we never had any testimony about why there wasn't additional security that day and why the National Guard was turned down when it was offered to them earlier in the week. After Cassidy Hutchinson's testimony, by the way, Liz Cheney tweeted out this article. The case for prosecuting Donald Trump just got much stronger. You see, June of 2022, that's right after Cassidy Hutchinson's testimony. When you click on the link, this is fun. It actually goes to a blank page over at the website, The Dispatch. You can't find it. But I found it. It was on another part of The Dispatch. Here it is. The case for prosecuting Donald Trump just got much stronger. New testimony may have produced a smoking gun. And there she is again, Cassidy Hutchinson. You see how important this testimony was? Yeah, and I don't want to bore you with the article, but I will point out that it's written by David French, another one of those true conservatives, the real conservatives, the ones who didn't follow the Trump MAGA cult, kept true to his foundational principles. You know, he's another one of those guys who call people like me a sellout. He wrote this article featuring Cassidy Hutchinson and this new testimony that really makes the case for prosecuting Donald Trump. David French isn't at the Dispatch anymore, by the way. He now writes columns for the New York Times and the Atlantic, and he's featured in many documentaries. And we're the sellouts.